There comes a turning point in every person's life, a moment where they wake up and realize it. The pain they feel is not caused by others, but by what they've allowed. Today, we solve a problem. Why do people lose their power, their confidence, and their respect? Because they tolerate what should have been rejected the very first time. This ends now. Imagine a room where your presence no longer holds weight. A room where your words land softly, unnoticed, unvalued. This is where the erosion of respect begins. It never arrives loudly or violently. It enters quietly, like a whisper, like a joke disguised as humor, like a tone that suggests you are not equal anymore. Machiavelli understood that power is not merely held. It is perceived. And the perception others have of you determines the influence you carry. The moment someone feels comfortable disrespecting you is the moment they stop seeing you as someone to consider, someone to honor, someone to take seriously. Disrespect is not always obvious. Sometimes it is subtle, and because of that, many allow it to pass. The mind tries to justify. Maybe they didn't mean it. It's not a big deal. I don't want to create conflict. But Machiavelli warns, the first tolerated insult becomes the foundation for all future disrespect. If you allow someone to talk down to you once, they will continue. If you allow someone to ignore your feelings, they will treat them as irrelevant. If you allow someone to belittle your achievements, they will continue to see you as small. Humans are creatures of patterns. What you accept becomes what others believe is acceptable. A king does not need to declare his power. His presence does. A strong individual does not need to demand respect. They command it by refusing to stay where they are not valued. Machiavelli would say that you do not need to raise your voice, defend your honor, or argue your worth. In fact, doing so often lowers your status in the eyes of others. The more you try to convince someone to respect you, the more you confirm that they had the power to take that respect away. Disrespect thrives when you try to prove yourself. Authority thrives when you remove yourself. When someone mocks your ideas, pay attention. When someone talks over you, note it. When someone treats your thoughts, your efforts, or your presence as disposable, that is the first sign of a shift in social hierarchy. And social hierarchy is real. Whether in friendships, relationships, workplaces, families, there is always a structure of influence. Machiavelli teaches that your position in that structure is shaped by how firmly you defend your dignity. Not through aggression, but through boundary. Consider this. When you distance yourself from someone who disrespects you, you do not just protect your peace. You elevate your value. Your absence reminds them of what they took for granted. Your silence forces them to confront their behavior. Your refusal to engage communicates a message more powerful than any confrontation. I will not remain where I am diminished. People respect what they risk losing. Disrespect also reveals truth. It reveals who sees you as equal, who sees you as useful, and who sees you as inferior. Someone who respects you will speak to you with clarity, even when they disagree. They will address concerns without belittling your identity. But someone who does not respect you will use tone, implication, humor, or dismissal to place themselves above you. This is not accidental. It is a tactic, whether conscious or instinctive. It is a signal of psychological dominance. To tolerate disrespect is to surrender your seat at your own table. Machiavelli would advise not to wait for repeated behavior. The first sign is enough. Because the first sign tells you where the relationship is headed. And the more you stay, the more you teach the other person that your comfort is negotiable, your worth is negotiable, your identity is negotiable. You cannot build influence on ground where your dignity is unstable. The world mirrors your self-treatment. If you allow others to cross you, you are crossing yourself. If you abandon your boundaries, you abandon your authority. And once authority is abandoned, it is very difficult to reclaim. Not impossible, but difficult. Because respect, once lost, does not return through explanation. It returns through distance, transformation, and the refusal to be who you were when they disrespected you. This is why Machiavelli emphasizes the importance of decisive withdrawal, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. When you step away, when you cut access, when you remove your presence, you restore your center. The people who deserve to remain will understand the message. The ones who don't were never meant to have access to you in the first place. And so the first law of personal power is this: you never tolerate disrespect. Not even once. There is a difference between what people say and what they actually do. Many speak with elegance. Many know how to promise admiration, affection, loyalty, and change. And yet their actions remain empty. Their hands stay idle. Their behavior stays the same. Machiavelli reminds us that the true measure of a person is found in their repeated actions, not in the words they craft. Words are the easiest currency a human can spend. They cost nothing. They require no sacrifice, discipline, no commitment. But action demands intention, time, effort, and sincerity. And that is why so many avoid it. Listen closely. A person's behavior over time reveals their truth more clearly than their declarations in moments of emotion. Someone may tell you they care, yet never prioritize you. Someone may tell you they will change, yet continue in the same patterns. Someone may promise you loyalty, yet disappear when you require support. Promises are not bonds, promises are predictions. Only consistency is proof. Machiavelli teaches that a ruler must not make decisions based on hope, desire, or the emotional resonance of spoken assurances. He must observe patterns. Humans are predictable. The person who breaks their word once will likely do so again. The person who requires constant reminders to treat you correctly does not respect you. The person who shows interest only when they risk losing you does not value you. They value the feeling of having you available. When someone makes a promise, watch what follows in the days after, not the hours, because in hours emotion still lingers. Watch the days. Watch the weeks. Watch how routine reality shapes their effort. That is where truth lives. That is where integrity breathes. A person who means what they say will act without being reminded. Their commitment will be visible, effortless, and steady. But many allow themselves to be deceived by language. The mind wants to believe what sounds good. We want to think intentions matter. We want to think that a sincere tone indicates sincerity in the soul. But Machiavelli warns that people will speak whatever words benefit them in the moment. A plea for forgiveness, a confession of love, an apology, a promise of improvement. These can be strategies, consciously or unconsciously used, to prevent the loss of access, attention, or comfort. And if you rely on words, rather than patterns, you will be manipulated by your own hope. You must learn to separate emotion from observation. When someone says they care, observe how they show it. When someone says they are loyal, observe how they behave when circumstances become inconvenient. When someone says they are changing, observe whether their habits shift, because real change is not spoken, it is demonstrated. It does not require announcement. It does not require dramatic expression. It simply becomes visible consistently day after day. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. A person reveals what they value through what they repeatedly choose. If they choose excuses, they value comfort. If they choose delay, they value convenience. If they choose avoidance, they value control. If they choose effort, they value you. People make time for what matters to them. People move toward what they believe is meaningful. People fight for what they do not want to lose. So do not explain how you want to be treated. Do not plead for change. Do not request consistency. Simply watch. Watch and the truth will become unavoidable. And once you see the truth, do not ignore it. The greatest tragedy is not being deceived by others. It is deceiving yourself after recognizing the pattern. When you deny what is clearly visible, you betray your own intelligence. Machiavelli understood that trusting words is the foundation of disappointment, but trusting patterns is the foundation of wisdom. A person's true nature is revealed through repetition. If they show care only when it suits them, understand the message. If they promise effort yet remain still, understand the message. If they plead for your patience yet do not grow, understand the message. You are not obligated to wait for potential to become reality. Potential is not a guarantee. Potential is not love. Potential is not loyalty. Potential is simply a possibility. And possibility is not enough to build your life upon. A ruler, a leader, a person of self-respect does not invest in futures that are spoken into the air. They invest in what is demonstrated in reality. Because the world is not shaped by what people intended to do. It is shaped by what they consistently did. There is a moment in every relationship, every connection, every human interaction where power either shifts towards you or away from you. And that moment is determined not by strength of voice, not by logic, not by physical dominance, but by emotional control. Machiavelli understood that emotions are the most vulnerable part of the human psyche. They are the gates to influence, persuasion, loyalty, and dependence. And the person who learns how to control emotion, whether their own or another's, holds the advantage in every dynamic. People do not always try to overpower you with force. They overpower you with feelings. They use guilt to make you second-guess yourself. They use silence to make you chase. They use kindness to hook your trust. They use anger to intimidate you into surrender. And the dangerous part is this: most of the time, they are not even aware they are doing it. Emotional manipulation is not always a calculated strategy. Sometimes it is instinct. Sometimes it is habit. Sometimes it is simply the natural skill of someone who has learned that emotions are easier to influence than thoughts. Machiavelli teaches that the one who controls emotions controls the relationship. Not because they are better, smarter, or more deserving, but because emotions guide decision-making more than rational thought ever does. When your emotions are triggered, your reasoning becomes clouded. You stop observing, you stop evaluating, you stop seeing clearly. You start reacting, and the person who can make you react has power over you. Consider the times you have stayed somewhere your mind wanted to leave. Consider the moments you apologized when you were the one who was hurt. Consider the situations where you lowered your standards because you didn't want to lose someone. Those decisions were not logical. They were emotional. And the cost was your power. To protect your influence, your dignity, your identity, you must learn to recognize emotional manipulation the moment it appears. It often looks like sympathy. It often sounds like softness. It often feels like connection. But the test is simple. How do you feel afterward? Drained, confused, responsible for someone else's feelings? If so, the dynamic is not love, it is control. People who manipulate emotions are skilled at making themselves look like the victim, even when they are the ones causing harm. They shift the narrative. They twist meaning. They make you question your memory, your intentions, your worth. You walk away from them feeling smaller, weaker, unsure. And the more unsure you are, the easier you are to influence. Machiavelli would say that the first defense against manipulation is self-awareness. You must know your emotional triggers. Do you fear being abandoned? Then someone will use withdrawal to control you. Do you fear being misunderstood? Then someone will use silence to force you to explain yourself. Do you fear conflict? Then someone will use anger to bend your boundaries. Control does not always require force. Often, it only requires knowing which emotion moves you. One of the strongest forms of power is the ability to remain unmoved. Not cold, not disconnected, simply composed. The more stable your emotional center, the harder it is for others to alter your decisions, your values, your direction. When someone tries to provoke you, do not react. Observe. When someone tries to guilt you, do not explain. Pause. When someone tries to rush your decisions, slow down. Emotional control is not suppression, it is self-command. But emotional control also requires understanding the emotional tactics others use. The guilt tactic, look at what I've done for you. The victim tactic, everyone hurts me, including you. The silence tactic, if you don't give me what I want, I will withdraw. The anger tactic, you'll submit because you fear conflict. These are not expressions of love. They are strategies of influence. Machiavelli reminds us that true loyalty is not born from emotional dependence. True loyalty arises from respect, consistency, trust, and alignment of values. So if someone must use emotion to bind you to them, they do not respect you. They fear losing you. They do not value your presence. They value your compliance. The person who can stay calm in conflict, who can withhold reaction when provoked, who can listen without being pulled by emotion. This person holds power in any situation because they are not being moved like a pawn. They are observing like a strategist. They choose their words carefully. They choose their silence intentionally. They decide when to stay, when to speak, and when to walk away. To guard your emotions is to guard your power. To guard your power is to guard your freedom. And once you guard your freedom, no one can move you without your permission. There is a moment in every person's life where they must decide what their value truly is. Not in theory and words, not in wishes, but in action. And that decision is revealed through boundaries. Machiavelli understood that power is not maintained by how loudly one speaks, but by what one refuses to accept. A boundary is not a wall. It is a declaration. It is the line between who you are and who you refuse to become. It is the line between what you allow and what you will never again tolerate. Most people believe that respect is something others give to you. But Machiavelli shows us that respect begins with what you enforce. People do not treat you based on how good you are, how kind you are, how forgiving you are. They treat you based on what you allow. If you allow someone to interrupt you, they will continue. If you allow someone to disregard your feelings, they will continue. If you allow someone to come and go as they please, they will continue. Not because they are cruel, but because humans adapt to the standards you set for them. And if you set no standards, others will set them for you. Boundaries are not created to control others. They are created to protect your identity, your peace, your dignity. Without boundaries, you become an empty vessel that anyone can pour into or drain from. You become a servant to the emotions, expectations, and demands of others. You begin to shape yourself around what others want, forgetting what you want. When that happens, your sense of self dissolves. You no longer love life, you react to it. Machiavelli teaches that a ruler must be both feared and respected, but fear here does not mean intimidation. It means clarity. When your boundaries are firm, clear, unwavering, People naturally understand how to interact with you. They do not test you. They do not push your limits. They do not assume access to your time, your energy, or your heart. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. The tragedy is that many people are afraid to set boundaries. They fear losing people. They fear disappointing others. They fear being seen as selfish, difficult, or cold. But here is the truth Machiavelli knew well. When you fear losing others more than you fear losing yourself, you have already surrendered your power. The cost of pleasing others is always your own identity. And once identity is lost, the world can shape you however it chooses. To set a boundary is to say, I choose myself, not in arrogance, not in harm, in recognition of self-worth. When you assert boundaries, people will react. Some will respect you more. Some will distance themselves. Some will become angry because they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Those who leave were never aligned with your growth. They were aligned with your compliance. They were not loyal to you. They were loyal to the version of you that did not require accountability. Machiavelli would tell you not to fear this loss. The removal of the wrong people is not destruction. It is refinement. It is clearing space for those who recognize your value without needing to be taught. Boundaries filter out those who only take. Boundaries attract those who know how to give, how to respect, how to stay with integrity. And boundaries are not spoken. They are demonstrated. You do not have to announce them. You do not have to explain them. You do not have to justify them. You show them through behavior. You do not chase. You do not over-explain. You do not ignore your own discomfort. You do not bend your standards to keep someone near. Your boundary is the calm decision to step back when something begins to cost you your peace. Your boundary is silence when someone tries to provoke a reaction. Your boundary is distance when someone shows you who they are. Your boundary is choosing your emotional stability over temporary attachment. Your boundary is the refusal to shrink yourself so someone else can feel bigger. A ruler does not negotiate their position to win affection. They hold their throne by knowing what is non-negotiable. Your throne is your self-respect, and your self-respect lives in what you refuse to allow, no matter who it costs, no matter what you feel, no matter how much history or connection exists. Because the moment you abandon your boundaries for someone else, you teach them that your identity is flexible, that your dignity is movable, that your worth is conditional. Self-respect is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is not proud. It is steady. It is calm. It is unshakable. It is the quiet clarity of knowing who you are and what you will not become. It is the understanding that closeness is a privilege, not a right. It is the awareness that love without respect is dependency, not devotion. And that without boundaries, you will lose yourself in the shadows of the people you try to keep near. What we have uncovered is not just advice. It is a framework for personal power. It is the understanding that everything you tolerate, everything you excuse, everything you stay silent about, slowly shapes the life you live. Machiavelli teaches that kingdoms fall not from outside invasion first, but from internal decay. From the weakening of standards, from the erosion of boundaries, from the acceptance of disrespect and emotional manipulation. Your life is no different. Your mind is your kingdom. Your dignity is your crown. Your boundaries are your walls of protection. If you allow disrespect, your influence diminishes. If you trust promises without observing actions, you misplace your loyalty. If you give others access to your emotions without guard, you surrender your freedom. If you fail to defend your boundaries, you let others rewrite your identity. Power is not always loud. Strength is not always visible, but clarity is unmistakable. And clarity begins with one choice, to no longer tolerate what diminishes your worth. When you walk away from disrespect, you rise. When you observe behavior instead of believing words, you gain wisdom. When you control your emotions instead of being controlled by them, you gain freedom. When you set boundaries, you become unshakable. The world will always test you. People will always reveal themselves. Situations will always challenge your values. But the one thing that determines your strength is whether you remain loyal to yourself. Because the greatest act of power is to choose yourself. Even when it is difficult, even when it is uncomfortable, even when others do not understand. This is how you reclaim your authority. This is how you rebuild your confidence. This is how you protect your peace. Not by force, by pride, but by unwavering self-respect.